Can you have a conversation that's grounded within yourself and keep the focus of control where it ought to be? If you're not used to it at first, it's going to feel
Wildly
so foreign,
uncomfortable.
very uncomfortable. That's why you're not having the conversations, because they're
Yes.
uncomfortable, right? But it's
Mhm.
repeating these types of conversations with your spouse, and you get better and better at being able to tolerate the discomfort of it. Then you actually have productive conversations that
Mhm.
actually are really intimate. And then you start seeing big shifts in positive directions in your relationship. Welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. I'm your host, Dan Purcell, a Christian marriage and intimacy expert and coach. I'm on a mission to help couples have the best sex and most emotionally intimate marriages possible. Our episodes cover topics you've always wondered about and are packed with practical advice designed to help you take your marriage to the next level. For anyone listening that wishes intimacy was less conflict and more connection, this episode is for you. 2 weeks ago, I released a podcast episode about dead bedrooms. I read an email from a man who is in a lot of pain around his relationship. So I addressed areas where I could see that he could work on in his relationship. But unfortunately, that episode lacked compassion, and I was wrong, so I want another chance to do it again properly this time. I've been there before to an extent where the quality of the intimate relationship isn't what you hope it could be. It can be extremely frustrating, lonely, and even hopeless at times when you feel like you're stuck in a relationship where everything else seems to be going well except when it comes to sex. For the spouse with the higher desire, he or she feels rejected and hurt. For the lower desire spouse, he or she feels confused and overwhelmed. As I've stated before, I believe good sex is healthy for a thriving, growing marriage relationship. Sex can be replenishing for the relationship. It can be bonding, has many health benefits, and breathes life into an otherwise mundane partnership. However, according to Justin Lee Miller, PhD, he's a sex researcher, he says about 1 in 7 Americans are in relationships with little to no sex. There are probably as many reasons as there are couples for why they've developed that pattern of intimacy avoidance in their marriages. It's hard to make generalizations in this area. But I am on a mission to eliminate poverty in bedrooms everywhere. I want to help couples overcome their challenges that inhibit them from fully giving generously and fully receiving the goodness that an intimate marriage can provide. I receive many emails from people who are confused and struggling in their marriage, and I'm grateful for your emails and your messages. With their permission, I want to share another email today. The names and other identifying details have changed, but their story is a real story. Amy Langford has been a guest on my podcast before. See episode number 101. She's a very talented marriage and intimacy coach. Thank you also for reviewing this podcast. Before I read this next review, thank you also for listening and sharing this podcast with your married friends. Now, this person signed his name Paul, and he writes, "Listening to all these shows has opened up a whole new level in my marriage. I just love the way I can just open up and talk to my wife about everything." Thank you, Paul. That's a great review. And if you would like to take a moment to leave a review, you can do so on Apple Podcasts. And if you hear me read your review over the air, just email support@getyourmarriageon.com and I'll mail you a special gift in the mail as a way of saying thank you. Amy, welcome back to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. I'm excited to talk about these things with you today.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
2 weeks ago, we spoke and we went through an email about a couple that's going through a difficult time in their sexual relationship. They use the term a dead bedroom, where they're not just having a lot of sex in their marriage. And anyway, we did this session together. We picked apart the email line by line and we're trying to be helpful. But I think it came across kind of harsh to the man. And I'm grateful for our listeners who trust me enough to share their feedback with me. They're like, "Dan, that man was really hurting, and I think you're pretty harsh." And so I want to redo it. I'm asking for a second chance, and I want to do a little bit better because I think they're right. I think we can do better.
I think
But
so
Amy,
too.
just real quick, why do you and I sometimes come across harsh like that?
Because it is easier to sit here and give advice and see what's going on, and it's harder to be the one receiving it. And also, we didn't know this couple. I think it's a lot easier as a coach. I usually know the couple. I know them on a more personal basis. I have a sense for, where their strengths lie, and also respect for their weaknesses. And not knowing the person, I think it was easier to give feedback that was maybe more harsh and not recognize all of the strength too, right? Without having them be present. So, um, but like in marriages, we all make mistakes all the time. And if there's anything I've learned in marriage, it's how to fail gracefully.
Uh-huh. Right.
And
Uh-huh.
so, and to do a redo and to acknowledge the error and to take ownership of it. And so I do. I take ownership of it and acknowledge it and apologize if there were any in that podcast. It was Johns. If there were any Johns out there that felt hurt or attacked, do respect you and the difficulty of your position. And in trying to be helpful, perhaps overhelped.
Right. Good. So we're modeling this for everyone today. I like what you said. It's not about avoiding mistakes. It's, can you get good at recovering when you do make a mistake?
Repairing and recovering, yes.
Yes, exactly. So we're asking for your forgiveness. I took down episode 175, and we're going to try this again with a different approach that we think will help. Amy, you and I, as marriage and intimacy coaches, care a lot about couples coming together better in the bedroom.
Absolutely.
We care a lot about the quality of the sexual relationship, which includes not just, are they having pleasurable sexual experiences, but are they communicating really well in and outside the bedroom? How is the quality of their intimate connection as a whole? That's something we care deeply about.
And intimacy includes emotional, mental, as well as physical and relational, right? So we care about all of those factors.
Right. And in my mind, they're all one and the same. They just are manifested in different aspects of our relationship. So we have this time a sample from a couple that we both know somewhat well. So it's a little different than the other one. And just a few caveats here. Again, we only get a glimpse of what's really going on. We don't have the full story. We don't have all the details here. And this person's very brave for sharing what's going on in their relationship and in their marriage. So with that caveat here, we're working off of limited information, but we're here to be helpful. Amy, will you tell us about this couple?
Yes. So Becca and Mark have been married for 20 years. They met in college. They have 4 kids. First, bravo for being married for 20 years. 4 kiddos. Bravo for that too. Also means they're engaged in a lot of family work. So we value and respect that. He is the higher desire in the relationship and she is the lower desire. And I will say that that's just a way to identify how their desire is presenting now, but there are many different versions of desire, meaning that perhaps sometimes the wife is a higher desire and the husband is lower. It's not specifically tied to gender. Just in this case, he is presenting as higher desire right now and she is presenting as lower desire.
Right. And this is actually Becca writing, saying from her perspective for most of this. This is who reached out to us about this. So I'll read a little bit and then how about we both comment on it as we go through. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay, Becca writes, I don't know what's wrong with me. I love my husband. We make a good team with the kids and in life. And I can see that, by the way. Both working the jobs, 20 years of marriage together, 4 kids. It does take a lot of teamwork to do that well. So I think they have a lot of good things going for them.
Absolutely. Maybe a good friendship too, it sounds like.
Right. She goes on to say, I chose to marry him and we can partner well in a lot of ways, except when it comes to sex and intimacy. We are at a complete standstill. He wants more sex, more intimate play, more positions, more of everything. And I don't want sex at all. Can you relate to this, Amy, at all?
I sure can. I was the lower desire in my marriage for a long, long time. And I also felt my husband and I made a great team, but there was just this gridlock when it came to intimacy. And we were in completely different pages. And it was hard to navigate that. So I respect her for bringing this up and for reaching out for help.
She goes on to say, no matter how hard I try, I don't feel like I'll ever be enough for him. I find myself putting less and less effort into our sexual relationship as a result. And that's something I hear a lot in my coaching sessions from the lower desire spouse, usually saying, no matter how hard I try, I feel like I'll never be enough for him or I won't be enough for her. Do you come across that too?
I do. They feel just lost. They feel confused. They feel uncertain. And from the higher desire side, they are often feeling very rejected, very ignored, very put off. And so from either side, there's some wounding or, hurt or feeling like there's something wrong with them or why isn't their spouse choosing them? So yes, I feel like there's often that feeling of not being enough on both sides of the equation.
And can I speak to that wounding or that hurt from the higher desire perspective? Because in my marriage, I am the higher desire spouse. And that rejection, like years ago, I remember just feeling so hurt. And research shows like emotional pain registers in the brain area similar to physical pain. So in your brain, pain is pain, whether it's emotional or physical pain.
Mm-hmm.
And like there'll be times for me where I'm fine most of the time, and then something will trigger me, and I'd have a outsized response to that little trigger, and I just feel really rejected, really lonely. And I remember expressing it to my wife once about really how I was feeling, which took a lot of courage, by the way, to tell her how hurt I was feeling. And she's like, I had no idea it hurt so much to you like that. Like she felt it, right? As I was expressing it. So the pain is real. And I assume my wife knew how pained I was, but she didn't until I was able to express to her how painful it was in that.
And I think it's equally painful and yes, I fully agree with what you're saying, and equally painful on the other side of the coin of the equation where a wife or a lower desire spouse is feeling like I'm trying and I don't know how to get there and why am I not getting there and how come this isn't working and what's wrong with me or I'm broken or or I freeze and why do I freeze? There's something that just so baffling or confusing. Or my husband and I used to say we felt like we just kept hitting up against the same brick wall and we're like, where's the door? Like, how do we get through this?
Right.
So,
which hopefully we can give some ideas from our own experience and the couples we've worked with as we go through this some more. But the pain is real and alive in this relationship too, it looks like.
Yes, and there is a door. So the hope is also alive.
Yes, there is a door. Absolutely. Definitely. Yes. Yep.
In that brick wall.
And you can take down the brick wall too. Right?
And you can take it down. Yeah. Or walk around it. You don't have to keep smashing your head against it.
Right. Exactly. Okay, she goes on to say, when we started having kids, my desire for sex and intimacy disappeared. And I think a lot of women can relate to that. Maybe I'm overtouched or maxed out or my hormones are off. I don't know. He wants me to get my hormones checked, but I don't see the point of giving him more reasons to demand more sex from me or to fix me.
So a couple thoughts come up for me here. Often, since this is a woman, often as women move into the phase of motherhood, there is a conflict within them between how to be erotic and to be a mother. There seems to be like you can be one or the other, but you can't be both.
Right.
And also those first year or couple years of keeping this infant and child alive are extremely demanding. So just noting that is a real transition that can be very difficult and you are often exhausted. So there's some grace there. But also, it's not meant to be where you stay forever.
Right.
And as you move out of that super demanding time, it's okay to realize that thriving mothers are also erotic and enjoy being aroused and have learned to find their desires, that the two don't conflict each other. They actually pair together very well. So sometimes just introducing the theme that and I don't mean that there's good and bad moms, but that good moms enjoy good sex.
Right.
Maybe I should take the good off that mothers can enjoy good sex. You can be a mom and you can be erotic, and those two don't have to compete.
Right. And at least speaking for me in my own marriage, how we handled sex from our firstborn till our sixth born was very different. We did it much better with our sixth born child. around that, just understanding, first of all, just acknowledging the demands of motherhood, but also there was a lot of grace given. Like, we just gave each other a lot of grace in that. She recognized where I'm coming from. I recognize where she's coming from. So there was a lot of ways we found to meet in the middle that
Right.
we felt were incompatible early on.
More freedom to have a broader definition of intimacy, a broader definition of sexuality, like a wider span, right, than just like penis and vagina sex, right? That there
Yeah,
were
exactly.
many ways
Uh-huh.
to stay connected and to be intimate. And also, I want to speak to the hormones. They get talked about a lot for
Yes.
females, sometimes for males, but a lot for females. And they can definitely be a contributing factor for sure. Absolutely. But I find that even a stronger factor is the mind and the meanings in your mind and how you are thinking about your sexuality, your relationship, your body, like those meanings that are alive for you. I find they're more powerful than hormones. So,
I like that. And I want to speak onto that too. I think from a higher desire spouse standpoint, you look at the lower desire spouse and you want to fix them. You may not use those words or think on those lines, but there's something broken in you and I want to fix you. And hormones seems like a really easy place to go because, at least in my mind, if my wife could just take a pill and all of a sudden she'd be a very sexually aggressive woman in bed, you know, like a total freak in bed from this pill because her hormones are now in check, like, I'll pay for that pill. But the reality, that's not reality, right? Her hormones could be perfectly balanced and fine, but if the relationship isn't great, or if her own understanding of sexuality isn't great, or the way we approach sex and the meanings involved is not, favorable, even the most balanced hormone person in the world will not find that sex appealing.
desirable.
So it's not just that. It's not just hormones. There's far, far more going on. But
Absolutely.
it's that I'm reading into this a little bit too. I do see he really wants to help and he's willing to invest in her. And I think he's just working with what he's got, with what information has been handed to him. So if hormones is something he hears about and can kind of relate to, it makes sense. So that's the advice he's going to offer.
Right. And it's okay to offer advice or to offer support. And I appreciate that he's doing that. It's a fine line, though, between offering advice and support and pressuring.
Right.
So when obviously you love your spouse and you care about your spouse, and sometimes we are blind to what's going on. And so sometimes we do need that insight from our spouse who's like, hey, I've kind of noticed. What do you think? But if it's done in a pressuring way, like if you don't do this or you have to do this so I can get what I want, it won't be helpful.
Great. Okay, let me go on.
Yeah.
Becky says, I just know that I don't find sex desirable, even though I do love him. How do I show him that I love him? Why is sex the only way he feels loved? I do so many things for him, but he doesn't see them. I wish I could talk to him, but I don't know what to say or how to say it. We try to talk about this, and he just tells me something is wrong and I need to figure myself out. But how? What should I do?
I hear the earnestness in this, and I don't have all the details, so I'm just going to make a guess here. Often the lower desire spouse is servicing the higher desire spouse in some way. Servicing meaning accommodating them, just knowing, like sometimes they'll have like a calendar in their mind and they're like, oh, it's been a week. I got to just, show up and give them sex. And so in that servicing frame, there is no blessing or benefit or enjoyment or self in it. And so in that accommodating or servicing framework, sex will not be desirable. It will not be enjoyable. It will not be something that you want to seek out. I kind of compare it to like watching someone else eat dessert. You're like,
right.
Great, I'm glad you had that dessert. I hope you enjoyed it. It doesn't intrinsically bring you pleasure to watch someone else eat a great dessert that you don't partake of.
Right. Uh-huh.
Sharing that dessert, now that's a different story, right?
Uh-huh.
So yes, sex is a very, very powerful way to communicate love and cherishing,
Mm-hmm.
and it can become, though, this accommodating frame where the higher desire is pursuing and the lower desire is just accommodating. And in that framework, it isn't desirable. So I bring that up for her to say, yes, this isn't desirable. And it would help if you start to find what is enjoyable for you. What types of things might you enjoy? What types of touch might you enjoy? What types of meanings, like being chosen, being spoiled, some playfulness, maybe like forbidden? What types of situations, like lower light, knowing what you appreciate and enjoy? Some self in it will help not only make that pleasurable for you, but also help you to be more present, which is always more pleasurable for the other spouse too.
Right. Right.
In that accommodating frame, you aren't really present. And so it doesn't have the replenishing, connecting, cherishing feel that
Uh-huh.
comes when both people bring themselves.
Yeah, I like that you said replenishing, because I think great sex is a very replenishing quality to that
Mm-hmm.
relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Can I speak to accommodation for a little bit? Or
Sure.
accommodating? It works in the short term. That's why couples do it, at least in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I can accommodate, if I can just offer sex for him in this instance, right, to placate him, he does feel loved. He
A
feels
little
taken
bit.
care of. It does. At least in the beginning, it does. But
Yes.
that's the trap. But the long term, it has a much worse negative effect. There's a lot of men that the wife will offer sex and you can smell it from a mile away. This is done out of, like, she's coming to him out of a sense of duty or obligation to kind of manage him. And it's kind of demeaning in a way,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Like pity
So
sex.
it's pity. They're doing it out of pity, not because you desire me, so to speak. It's because you pity me. And it's a little humiliating sometimes to receive that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But sometimes the lower desire wife doesn't know how to find themselves in it, and so they're almost just like trying to buy time.
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah.
placate, which you're right, has
Mm-hmm.
too high of a cost. And
Mm-hmm.
in the end, then the lower desire starts feeling like they're just a body, or they're just this instrument for the higher desire's release. And that's where the meanings really are not desirable. So it makes a lot of sense that you wouldn't desire that.
Yeah, exactly. There are some couples too that devalue sex as a love language. If I'm allowed to call sex a love language,
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that fully, but just go with me for here. Like physical is like so superficial, or that's what they think, right? Like, use your words to tell me you love me, because to them
Or your
that is so
action.
much. Your actions are so much more valuable than. But we forget that both are important. They're all important. There's certain things that can only be communicated without words through sex that convey huge amounts of meanings. Sex is a
Mm-hmm.
very meaning making, meaning producing act. It's a language in and of itself.
Yeah. And you're uncomfortable at first stepping into that language, right? In the same way when you're learning a language and you don't have fluency in it yet. And so it
Right.
takes facing discomfort and being willing to try things, and also recognizing what is going on for me. Like, um, how am I viewing this time together? How am I defining what's sexual? Am I like, is it whether or not I just have an orgasm or he has an orgasm? There's much deeper meanings than that. Is it about, are you thinking about how you cherish this person, how grateful you are to have them in your life, how well you can communicate through that touch that has so much feeling and meaning in it?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important to note that.
Yeah, and don't discount sex as a powerful language. It
Yes.
just because it's uncomfortable, it doesn't feel intuitive for you right now, doesn't mean it's a lesser form of loving someone.
Right. And often when couples get in this type of gridlock, then that's when the feeling like sex is the only way that he feels love. And
Yeah.
it's more part of the gridlock than actually like what's really happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like more of the polarization, because I'm sure there are lots of ways that love is being communicated in the relationship and in the partnership, but it will start to feel like that if they're in like a servicing or accommodating framework.
Right, right. I have one more thing to say on this topic before we move on to the next paragraph. It's sometimes the higher desire spouse reinforces this dynamic in their relationship, especially when they feel really desperate for sex. They will they'll say things like, this is a need. You need to accommodate me. You need to service my needs. I had a friend that once told his wife, metaphorically, if you have a cow, you have to milk it every day, like, right? Like she has some
This is your
obligation.
duty.
Yes, right. Like the cow's going to die if you don't milk it. Like,
Oh my goodness.
right. So they, unwittingly,
Set it up that way.
they set it up that way. So she
Mhm.
responds in a dutiful way.
Mhm.
And then he's complaining about, why don't you just desire me? Why does it come out of duty? When he himself set it up out of duty to begin with. And it's both sides. And that's why I love relationship work. It's complex, but it is a system.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter if it's a lower desire person or the higher desire person. One of you can change the dance. One of you can change the pattern and the dynamic, because you're both always co-creating the dynamic that you have.
Yes, absolutely. And even the terms high and low desire, I think we use them to identify, but in some ways they can also kind of be a trap, because I think we're all capable of desire, and it's about finding that journey to your desire. And I think they may present in different ways, meaning that what we call the higher desire, they may have more of that spontaneous available, but that doesn't mean what we call the low desire doesn't have desire, or that there isn't beautiful things in the way that their body responds and is aroused. And so I use these terms, but I also use them with, a little hesitation, because desire is present in everyone.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I'm so glad you said that. Let's go to the next paragraph. I think it's more of the same of what we had just talked about, so I don't know how much more to add. But she says, I avoid sex because I feel taken and empty afterwards. I don't understand why. I thought it was supposed to be so good. I can orgasm sometimes, but it feels like a lot of work to get there. I also feel like there's a clock ticking, and I only have 3 to 4 days in between, or max a week, from our last intercourse before he gets grumpy, pouty, or grabby again. I want him, but I don't know how. It's as if I'm either unhappy because we had sex and he's happy, or I'm happy without sex and he's unhappy that he didn't get sex. It doesn't feel like there is a win for both of us.
Yes, this is describing that servicing duty framework. And so that is what happens. It's a lose-lose situation on both sides. And it's being reinforced with the grumpiness and the poutiness, like, oh, if I don't do this, then I have to manage him even more. And so this is just that cycle being reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. And it could take either one of them stepping out of it. Either one to say, like a higher desire could say, I realize I've been pressuring you and pushing you and asking you to service or accommodate me. I want to give you some space. Or let's try something new. Let's try something different. Or it could be the lower desire speaking up and saying, I haven't really enjoyed this, not because I don't love you, but because I don't know what I want. And I realize I need to start figuring out, what are my desires? What does my sexuality look like? What could that be for me? And can we open up and explore some more? Or can I have a little space to figure that out in me? Or can we get coaching? Or can we go to a couples retreat, right? Like opening of the conversation to change the pattern and change the dynamic, because it is a dynamic that keeps producing this over and over and over.
That is so good. I like that. And in that example you just illustrated, it's each person taking full responsibility for their half, their part of the marriage. I want to speak to one more aspect of what was just said here from my own experience. I used to think if my wife had more pleasure during sex, aka if she had more orgasms during sex, then she would want sex more often. That was my logic. And I think it makes sense to a degree, because why participate in something that you don't find really fun, right? So I put an enormous amount of focus and pressure on me to make sure she has a good time. And if the littlest thing set her off in the sexual encounter, I'd feel like I blew it. And there goes my chances of her wanting to have sex with me next time, because I finally convinced her to say yes. Now we're in it. And she had better have an orgasm.
That's a lot of pressure.
Man. And guess what? It was very counterproductive. Amy, can you tell us why that was so counterproductive to our
Then you have pressure
goals?
to perform, and
Yeah.
it feels like so much work instead of just follow the pleasure and be present, or be able to say, this isn't working for me, because in that much pressure and you say this isn't working for me, then the other person may just crumble and you can't pick it back up and keep going, right? There's not the freedom, there's not the honesty and the ability to collaborate. It's just pressure towards a finish line.
Right. Can a couple relax in that kind of a situation?
Oh gosh, no. And especially if it's
No.
someone whose desire, is more responsive and takes a little longer, that much pressure and anxiety makes it really difficult to engage.
No. It's actually counterproductive. It makes sex worse. It makes it less
Absolutely.
enjoyable, less
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
And now stepping into those encounters is like, oh boy, here we go.
It's very pressure-filled situation instead of free and relaxing, open, replenishing.
Right. I think sometimes you need to take the focus off of orgasm or some outcome. And instead, when you come together, just ask yourself, can I relax and have fun here? That's what it really is. Can I relax and have fun? Regardless of what happens or doesn't happen.
Yeah, relax and be present. And there's a lot of couples that don't talk at all to each other during intimacy.
Oh, right. And
They
I think
can't
that's
say,
matter of preference, right? Some people probably don't want to talk a lot.
right, I'm not
while
saying you
others
should
do.
have long, but can't say over here more, not this or that, or, oh, I really love this, or how about this, or what do you think in here? Some collaboration. They're just silent or not making eye contact or, connecting in that way. So, and I think just broadening that definition of what is intimacy and sexuality. Maybe it's massages, maybe it's tantric, maybe it's sexual touch, maybe it's eye gazing, maybe it is a new position, maybe it isn't, maybe it's role play, maybe it's playing one of your fun games on Intimately Us. Can you broaden this so that there's lots of room instead of we are on one straight, direct, narrow path?
Okay, then she concludes and says this: sometimes feel like I want to push him away. And sometimes I do, just so he doesn't get the wrong idea. I care about him, but I feel trapped. If I snuggle or kiss or touch him, then he thinks it means we have sex. He gets so hurt if we don't have sex, and it makes everything else hard in our relationship. Can you help me? I am so confused and lost and frustrated. And I really worry if I don't figure this out, he'll leave me or have an affair or something like that.
Again, so much pressure. There's a lot of tension in their physical affection so that they can't communicate that without having that pressure. And that is part of that servicing framework. I think a great way to break this is to allow more room for the yes, no, maybe. To allow more room for conversations, more room for honesty, more room to touch each other, and then understanding that this doesn't mean that it doesn't have to lead to just one thing, that it's always an ebb and flow between them. That affection is ebbing and flowing, meaning one might be the giver, one might be a receiver, and it can go back and forth and back and forth. It doesn't have to have a specific outcome.
I want to give our listeners some real practical advice on what to do if this is your situation, because now they might see it, they might understand, okay, this makes sense, but I don't really know what to do next. And you feel kind of stuck in it. You know what's not working, but you don't know what to do instead. You feel lost and foreign in it. Do you want to role play with me, Amy?
Sure.
About this, a conversation like that?
Sure.
How about I'll be Mark and you be Becca. And I hope as you listen here, this is just one potential type of conversation to have it. There's no right or wrong way to do it. But I hope you pay attention to the key here is to focus on personal responsibility. What do I have control over, and how can I do better at it? I think that's the key to these kind of conversations going well.
Right. Owning what is yours and being just so honest takes a lot of courage,
Mm-hmm.
and it's wildly uncomfortable.
So, Becca, can we talk?
Yeah, sure. What's up?
This is really hard for me to say, and my heart is thumping, and I feel so embarrassed about what I want to share with you. But I want you to know I love you. I really do. I think you're beautiful. You turn me on all the time. I do struggle feeling at times just really rejected in our sexual relationship. And I don't think this is a surprise to you. Like that other night when, we're watching a movie with our family, we're sitting next to each other on the couch. And I made a move to put my arm around you, and you kind of scooted away from me a little bit. That you probably didn't realize how much that hurt me. I crave physical affection from you. I just want you to want me sexually sometimes, and I don't know how to get it. And I know grabbing for it doesn't work, but I do want to know what you think about it. Do you see what I see?
I didn't realize how much that hurt you. So first I want to say I'm sorry. And I can see this happening between us, where I pull away because I'm uncertain what you mean by the affection.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me more about what you mean when you put your arm around me?
Yeah, it means I want you. I'm attracted to you. And I want to be with you in bed. Frankly, I don't apologize for that. I think you're fantastic and beautiful, and I want to have more of that beautiful influence in my life. I think it, breathes life into me and into a relationship. And when it's gone, or when it's not frequent, I feel really frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a saint. I get grumpy. I get short with you. I also find myself really focusing on trying to fix you. I talk to you about getting your hormones checked. I talk to you about how distracted you are with the kids, and you don't give me enough time. And I'm realizing now that's the wrong. I should be working on me, put the focus on me. But I do tend to blame you for a lot of the lack of sex in our relationship.
I feel that blame and I feel the pressure. And I'm not quite sure how to fully show up, but I do care for you and I do want to learn how to show up.
Mm-hmm.
I want to learn how to want you. I want there to be a space where there's not so much tension and pressure, and there's more room for me to figure out how to show up.
I'm just wondering if you have any feedback for me or any information for me on how I can, I guess, if we're like rewinding the clock to our movie night as a family all over again, what could I have done differently?
I don't know that you could have done anything differently in that moment. I saw it as you were committing me to something you were taking from me. It wasn't like, let me give you my arm and bring you in. It was like, I want something from you. And I pulled away from that.
I have such a strong instinct to get defensive right now. And I tell you that was not the case at all. But I do admit, even if it's like 1% of it is about, I do take what's not being offered.
And
that's
I
hard
want
for
to
me
be
to
able to
admit.
freely give more, because when I feel taken from, then I feel like my guard has to go up and I have to wall up. And in that walled up space, I can't show up freely. It's harder for me to be open, to be affectionate, to, cuddle into you. I feel like I have to wall up.
Got it. So I need to check myself at the door, so to speak. Is this gesture about honoring and giving and cherishing you, or is this more about taking something that I want from you? In a way.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw it that way, and I don't think you're all the way correct in that, but I do see you're correct in it, part of the way, because I see it in myself now that you pointed it out. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. I appreciate you being so honest. And I think I sometimes rely on you just to lead the way, and so that I don't have to look into myself and find what is my desire. I can just follow you or just do what you ask, but then I feel so taken from. So
Hmm.
I think I need to find what is desirable for me and how that would look and feel and be, instead of using you as my measure. Like, who am I in this?
And as you say that, I just feel in me like this strong tendency to want to pounce on that idea and like give you like 4 or 5 ideas of things you can do better to do that and keep the focus of the problem on you.
Mhm.
But I'm
Yeah,
realizing that's not going to help. That's, again, repeating our same pattern we've done all the time. So I'm biting my tongue right now as you share these things with me.
I appreciate that. I know how difficult that is. And I know you can see all of my blind spots and all of the ways that I could step in more and do
Oh,
more
yeah, I totally can.
and be more and show up more. But I think it would also help if you recognize how I am showing up.
Oh, like I don't give you enough credit
No,
for what you
just,
do.
yeah.
That's right. Like the other night, after the kids were in bed, you woke me up so you could be with me. I was already asleep, but you woke me up. I really appreciated that. And I
Thank
know it
you.
was so easy for you just to let me sleep, but that you woke me up so you can have some intimate time with me. That meant a lot to me. I can see how that was, you really putting your neck out there for me.
I am trying. I think I thought sex was just for you, and now I'm learning it's for me too. And what does
Mm-hmm.
that look like? And how could that be really meaningful for me? So it would be helpful if we can have some more understanding about how to create those types of meanings. And as I learn about them, to have me be able to share them and for you to share yours. I think I know a lot about you and what you desire and what you want, and far less about me and what I desire and what I want. And so I'm trying to learn that, and I appreciate the space and the generosity you give me as I learn. And also how to see when you reach for me with your arm, or, pull me in or kiss me or whatever it is, that that's not an obligation to something, that's just an opportunity to be close, an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity, a bid for connection, and just check in with me. Where am I at? How do I want to connect? What would be genuine for me?
Great. Timeout. We're done with the role play. But holy
Yeah, that
cow,
was a
Amy,
long
it
role
it
play.
was even in the role play. It felt I could feel my body activating. I could
Yeah.
feel like the sweats. Like it was
You
like,
did a good job, Dan.
well, I've practiced. Thanks. But what I'm trying to say is like, even though it was a practice, even though we're just role playing here, like I see in me all those tendencies that I tend to have, like pouncing like on the opportunity to like take the focus off me on the other person, or like start fixing and suggesting or whatever. Which, by the way, there is a time for fixing and suggesting. So the advice of never try to fix your spouse, I don't think is complete. But in this kind of a dialogue, it would have been very counterproductive if here I am opening up how I feel, and then all of a sudden the whole shift of the conversation's going on to how you're a crap wife. You could do
Right.
better
And
at
that's
servicing
really
your
not
husband.
going to invite any more open conversations.
No,
And
it doesn't.
and when
So,
I know that about
yeah,
you, then I'm going to be super on guard. Like,
guarded.
oh, he's getting open only so he can come in the back and attack.
Yeah,
Sneak
exactly.
attack.
Right. As we're doing this mock dialogue, I can feel my body activate, and I'm focusing on calm the heck down. That's one of my favorite phrases, right? I am trying to calm myself down. I'm finding my center. I'm being grounded in me as we're talking, instead of getting reactive to what you're
Right.
saying.
I call
And
that
that's,
responding, not reacting.
yeah.
Like, what
But it
can I agree
requires,
with? Yeah.
yes, but it requires you to, as your body gets activated, notice it. Can you calm it down? Is it deep breathing? Is it feeling your bottom in your seat? What is it that
Right.
you can use to like calm yourself down, get anchored, so you can have productive conversations, actually resolve something in it instead of just reacting?
And sometimes you do need to take more of a break, because these are such intimate, deep
Heavy.
conversations, right? And
Yeah.
if you are really triggered or activated, it's okay to say, you know what? I'm really losing myself here. I need 5 minutes, or I need 10 minutes to go cool off. And can we continue when I get back?
Right.
Totally okay.
Or pick it back up tomorrow.
Or tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah. And the point is, though, you do return when you say you do, right?
Exactly.
This isn't about buffering or escaping.
It's not an escape, yes. It would be stonewalling if you just leave, but you are coming back and you say very clearly when that will be. And it's not about avoiding the conversation or dropping the conversation or anything like that. It's recognizing that you are dysregulated and in some type of reactive or regressive state, and you need to get yourself under control.
This kind of conversation could have gone in many different directions, but the point is, can you have a conversation that's grounded within yourself and keep the focus of control where it ought to be in these types of conversations? And you're going to feel really uncomfortable if you're not used to it at first. It's going to feel
wildly
so foreign.
Uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable. That's why you're not having the conversations, because they're uncomfortable, right? But this is like going to the gym. This is your workout. It takes, you do it as much as you can tolerate, and then you will back off. You do it again, and you might be able to tolerate just a little bit more the next time, and you back off. But it's repeating these types of conversations with your spouse, and you get better and better at being able to tolerate the discomfort of it. Then you actually have productive conversations that actually are really intimate. And then you start seeing big shifts in positive directions in your relationship.
Yep.
But commit to the process. It takes practice, and you do it.
It takes a lot of practice. And this may be a conversation that, like the one that we had, may actually take several conversations to get through. It may have happened in pieces. So
great. And just a plug for our retreat. This is something that we teach in depth. We've sold out of the retreat this year, unfortunately. So you get on our waiting list for next time. But we do also have our program, the Get Your Marriage On program, formerly Next Level, where we teach these skills and help you as a couple work through whatever it is that's kind of getting in the way, those walls. We help you find your door or help you take down the wall, whatever it is, help you deal with your resentments. And so you can actually build a really fun and exciting marriage.
Coaching has literally turned my marriage around completely. So I am so grateful for the coaching that I got and that I continue to get and that we continue to learn and work and grow. But I was working with a couple last week, and they were talking about how their marriage is completely new. It's redone. They actually even got new wedding rings. Like their marriage has completely changed from coaching, and the tension and the pressure are gone, and they can have these more honest conversations. And I think it is a process that we learn how to do. But I also believe very strongly that marriages can thrive and that they can be a very connecting, intimate, beautiful relationship.
Yes. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in accelerating growth in your marriage, either sexually, emotionally, or spiritually, I want to invite you to work with me in my affordable coaching program called Next Level. More information about Next Level and my fun and sexy apps for couples are available at getyourmarriageon.com. Please also don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And be sure to tell your married friends. I promise, they will thank you for life. Now go get your marriage on.